Hello, and welcome to the cheap seats on 1WSR. Remember, you can follow us on 1WSR, but my name is Mpho Muklani, and this is the show where we discuss all things happening in the English Premier League, and we also have a Fantasy Premier League segment at the back end of the show. It's a full show. We've got a full panel. Cyrus is back. Wahid's back, and I've got Dean, who's becoming more common like me, which is awesome. But thanks to Tempo last week for joining in and helping
us out. Good choice of words,
Mpho.
Very good choice of words that you had there.
Yes, but thanks, Simple, for joining us last week for the Gameweek 26, which was the only thing to discuss outside of the fact that Liverpool were on the slide. This week, we're going to be discussing the top four and everyone's chances in the top four. Sadly, we won't be discussing Arsenal because I don't think mathematically it's ever going to happen. If we had a top six discussion, then it is possible, but unlike me, I don't think the panel believes in miracles, so that's why Arsenal's out. But before we get on with things, remember you can follow us on these various platforms, interact with us. On these ones, the most important one is to like and subscribe onto the YouTube channel. You can follow the guys. All our Twitter handles are there. So if you want to DM us and let us know what you think about what we said about the club.
Don't DM me. Hashtag don't DM me.
You can slide into Cyrus's DMs. But first, before we start, Wahid, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, Mpho. Yeah, I haven't been on the show in a couple of weeks, but yeah, happy to be back. Looking forward to it.
In the throes of married life there, let's move over to another married man, Cyrus. How are you doing?
I would say uber married man compared to the rest. But yeah, good. Just really excited about what's happening towards the end of the season. It's going to be really intriguing to see what happens. And this particular discussion is one I'm very, very keen to have.
Yeah, Dean, how are you doing? You seem to have moved places in the house, or have you moved to a new house?
Just mixing it up, Like to keep the people guessing.
When you live alone, it's easy.
You do what you want to do. But yeah, good week. I mean,
Gareth Bale's back.
Gareth Bale's back, and in all honesty, it could be worse. I mean, could be on Love Island, South Africa, right? So
why aren't you on Love Island?
I asked myself the same question. I know.
I don't think his accent is thick enough.
Aren't the contestants solely from the south of Joburg? Like, don't you fit the profile exactly?
Yeah, but I just needed one more tattoo, and then they said they would get me on.
And it's the one that says "Mom."
Yeah, exactly.
No, you laugh, but Dean's got one here that says Chicago.
Yeah, but that's because
I figured that out.
Now we've got to find out why.
Now we've got to find out why.
Because you don't want us to start telling you why. Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, let's move on, guys. Let's go. Let's not talk about tattoos, even though someone's a Bears fan and he doesn't watch NFL. But anyway. Blind loyalty to cities is something I don't.
Let us also ask you, how are you doing, Mpho?
Oh, no, I'm good. It's been an interesting week. Arsenal's won 2 in a row, which is like the first time in I don't even remember how long. So, yeah, we're good. The train's going. Arsenal's good. I'm happy.
People are loving Willian.
Hey, look, we had a Chelsea special there on Saturday, which is something on Sunday, which is something I didn't expect. But thank you, Cyrus. Thank you very much.
We'll give you at least 3 points once a season. Yeah. And it was generally always against Spurs. But anyway, we won't go there.
But here's an interesting stat. I think Willian is like top 4 in assists this season. He's got 6 assists, and I think he got 3 on Sunday. Yeah, no, not at Arsenal. Like in the league itself. Yeah, I was looking at it and I was like, well, this is wild. But he gets them in bunches. He got 2 against Fulham. He gets 1 in between, and then he got 2 against Leicester City. So
I guess that's why he wanted to stay in London. London buses. You hope for 1, you get 2 at a time.
Okay, guys. So now I was looking at the log today, and I saw that Man City are now on 65 points, 15 ahead of Manchester United, but everyone else. They currently are looking to me like how Usain Bolt runs 100 meters, starts slow, looking like he's probably going to lose it. Somehow in the middle, he picks up momentum and nobody ever understands why. And all of a sudden, by the time we've got 20 meters left, he's opened up a
He's
gap.
slowed down and he's
Man's
smiling
laughing
over
at
his
you.
shoulder.
Yeah.
Well, so I think Pep is laughing at us because he keeps on doing the rotation for all the FPL managers to tear their hair out. But in the top 4 race, we have one shoe-in, which is Manchester City. We can lock them in. I don't think anyone's going to catch them, or they're going to drop out of the top 4. The other team, and surprise, surprise, congratulations, Wahid, will put Manchester United there on 50 points. I think because of the way this league is set up with Spurs and Aston Villa on 39 points in 8 and 9, it might be a little bit hard for them to pull out, but it's still possible for them to drop out of the top 4. But I'd say maybe you could consider them a shoe-in, maybe not as certain as Man City. But then the other two, Leicester at 3, West Ham at 4, with chased by Chelsea, Liverpool, and Everton, because we need to consider Everton. I'll start with Wahid. Where do you think this top 4 race is going to end? Do you see your team sliding down, or do you think that you are, as a Manchester United supporter, comfortable in that top 4 seat, or are you afraid? Are you afraid of the guys coming behind you?
I wouldn't say afraid. I think we'll do just enough to hang on to second. I must be honest with you, but it wouldn't completely surprise me to be to be drawn into a battle for third and fourth by the end of the season. I think that the gap between second and fourth will be very, very small come the end of the season. So I don't think it will be comfortable. I think we might still be going into game week 36, 7, and 8. So like with work to do to secure second or third, whatever it is at the end of the season. But I do think we will in the end. So I do think United will end second. If I'm putting a prediction on it. And then it's all about third and fourth. So yeah, I personally think that one of Leicester and West Ham will end there, and I think that Chelsea might catch the other one and maybe just sneak into fourth there. My personal feeling is that Leicester are going to drop off just again. We've seen Brendan Rodgers crash and burn a few times, and injuries to players like Harvey Barnes isn't going to help, and James Maddison isn't going to help his cause. We saw it at the end of last season after Project Restart. Leicester weren't the side they were before that. And we've seen it during his Liverpool days. Brendan Rodgers' teams don't exactly end seasons as well as they started. So I think they might be pipped to fourth again. I think Chelsea might find themselves hovering around third at the end, and I think David Moyes' side is going to just sneak that fourth spot at the end, which is funny because I predicted them to go down.
Relegation.
So here's one thing I've learned. Never listen to Wahid's predictions at the beginning of the season, which then makes us question what he just said. But we'll believe him for this time because finally he's accepted that David Moyes is a Champions League level coach. Cyrus.
No. Don't put words in my mouth. Do not do that.
If he's gonna finish at 4, he's a Champions League level.
It's a perfect storm. He's got players playing well at the right time. Lionel Jesse's going there to get him the fourth spot.
As Wahid says about a perfect storm, I would argue that that's what happened with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, in the sense that everything seems to have worked out perfectly for him to this point. And potentially, like, you said United probably won't get caught. I'm looking at this points tally and I'm thinking, I don't really know about that. And the reason I say that is, firstly, there's protocols that could cause issues with United. So they have to make sure all of their guys stay on side, nobody breaking their COVID protocols. And then the other thing being that injuries. If they don't get any injuries to somebody who's as important as a Bruno Fernandes, then they should be fine. But United's run-in towards the end of the season is incredibly tough. They've got City to come, West Ham, they've got Spurs, they've got Leeds, but they've also got Liverpool and Leicester. So within that run, there are some really, really tough games to be played. And when you look at somebody else like Leicester, who unfortunately they've had all of these injury issues, could actually have seen themselves rise if they were in better form. Now, this is going to the Chelsea side of things. If you're looking at it from that perspective, their run-in isn't as bad. I think that when you're looking at the games that are really tough now, they just played United, you're going to play Liverpool, and that's going to be the key determinant. I think that if Chelsea get at least a point there, it keeps them within touching distance of everybody else. But the other thing is that they have to ensure they don't lose that game, because what they want to do is stay in touch with the rest. I do think West Ham might fall away in this chase for the top four, but that between Leicester, Chelsea, West Ham, Liverpool, and even Everton, there's going to be a whole bunch of moving with the next couple of weeks. And I think that Chelsea have the squad to do stuff. If we pick up injuries or somebody has to isolate in COVID protocols or whatever the case may be. But I do think, though, that I wouldn't write United off from being totally safe. I think they are going to have to fight as hard as anybody else in order to maintain that top four status. And
we've seen it before. We've seen it in the Champions League. We've seen us absolutely run away and then get caught because certain things happen and we weren't as secure as we might have thought. It's not like it's unfeasible to see us getting caught into
exactly.
But yeah, my point with thinking that United was safe is that I think United of the teams that I've named probably do have the easier run in having played a lot of the big six teams, because they only have Spurs, City, and
Liverpool and West Ham. So Spurs, West Ham, Liverpool, and Leicester. That's a terrible run-in. Because, yes, Leicester have now got these injuries that are going to be, make it a little easier for teams to beat them. But that's I think, possibly the toughest of all of the run-ins for everybody else.
Well, all we just need is for the referees to stop being dicks about it and just give us the penalties we deserve.
I think, as they always say,
we're not going to open that conversation.
If anything, one of the things that's really interesting is there was a specific game where Chelsea played Man United earlier in the season where there was
no, we're not talking about manhandling. No. We're not talking about
No, I'm just saying.
Okay.
They evened themselves out. Over the course of a season. You're just frustrated now.
Let's say this. Chelsea were denied a penalty at Old Trafford. Let's say this. Chelsea were denied a penalty at Old Trafford, and Manchester United were denied a penalty at
Actually, that's not necessarily true.
Whoa.
To finish that,
I'm not getting into a Chelsea.
I'm going there.
No way. You can do this at the back end.
Between the ref going to check VAR and saying, "No, I'm not interested," and people absolutely waving off an assault in the box as if it never happened. There's a massive difference between the two, but we'll leave it at that.
Let's leave it at that. Okay.
We're done.
So the reason why I thought Manchester United would survive is that outside of the traditional top six, Manchester United have done really well. They've beaten West Ham away from home. They've I don't know what happened with Leicester when they played them in that first round. I think they did lose, but we will give them that. But they've accumulated the second highest points against non-teams outside of the.
We didn't. We were up against Leicester, and we had a collective brain fart to draw 2-2.
Yes, so you didn't lose, but so United have accumulated the second highest number of points. Well, they are number 2, but outside of the top 6, so they are comfortable with teams outside of the top 6, which is why I felt that with them getting through these games, they could hold on if they don't have the PSG like Champions League slide that we saw earlier in the season. Dean, I'm going to talk to you about Spurs, and then we'll go back and talk about Leicester and West Ham because I think they're very important. Do you think you can, with Bale, Son, and Kane, now all of a sudden firing some sort of, yes, it was Burnley. Can you catch everybody? Are you hoping to fight for top 4, or is it let's have another season in Europa League, or are we looking for the back door, as Mourinho always does?
No, so here's my thing.
What Mpo is asking is, do you want more Thursday night football?
I heard Mpo's question, Wahid. Don't worry. I heard what he asked. You don't need to clarify.
You want to know if you are enjoying this Thursday night football?
I am loving it. I am loving the game. Spurs. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Spurs have a game in hand against Liverpool, and if we win that game in hand, Liverpool are on 43 and Spurs will go to 42, right? So We play Fulham, so don't worry. My thing is, and this is my little prediction, which will throw a bit of a cat among the pigeons, is I see City finishing top, probably see United finishing second. I'm then going to say that Chelsea are going to finish third, and it's going to be a battle between Liverpool and Spurs for fourth, because I don't see Leicester sticking around now with Maddison and Barnes gone. That team's just so thin at the moment. Fine, they're out of Europa League. They're still in FA Cup, but they'll probably get knocked out of that because they're facing United. So I back United there. And West Ham, I mean, in terms of West Ham's next couple games, they've got Leeds, which is fine, but then they got United, they got Arsenal, they got Leicester, and they got Chelsea. So they basically play 4 big teams in 7 games, essentially. And given what happened against City, obviously at City, no one's going to beat City, or it's very difficult to beat City at the moment. I just don't see West Ham and Leicester sticking around. If Barnes and Maddison stayed fit, I would have said different picture. But I honestly think Liverpool and Spurs are going to battle it out for that top 4 spot. I think Everton might be in and around that conversation, but you kind of don't know what's going to happen with an Everton team. It could be good, but it could also go horrendously bad depending if DCL gets injured or not. So that's the way I kind of see it happening. And I don't think it's an unrealistic expectation, especially given the fact that Spurs and Liverpool, it's hard to say, but they are kind of neck and neck. Both had slumps. Both are kind of trying to find feet. It's kind of a weird situation. But I think given the run in, I think we probably have enough to get us there to the top 4. And I think it'll be a big battle there. And I definitely think the fact that we've seen Bale come to his best form that he's ever been this year so far. My only thing is, as a Spurs team, if we just don't let the ball go beyond our halfway line, we stand a chance, because the defense can't defend. So as long as we just keep it in the top half and we leave it to Bale, Son, Kane, Moore is doing his things. I hope Dele comes back, and then hopefully Ndombele and Højbjerg kind of hold that midfield. I honestly think Spurs do stand a pretty decent chance of finishing top 4, or at least having a decent run in and a decent battle for it. But yeah, it's kind of...
Can I please chip in here?
No.
Because there's some stuff that Dean said. I'll do it anyway. I don't think Spurs have the wherewithal, and this comes down to mental fortitude specifically, not necessarily in terms of firepower. I think that when it comes to the forward attacking players, you've definitely got the right kind of players to keep you within that hunt. Kane, Son, and then potentially Bale and any other person from there. There should be enough in Spurs to get the goals. I think one of the things we haven't taken into consideration here is Everton, because as much as, like you mentioned, Spurs having a game in hand on Liverpool, Everton do too. And whereas Spurs win that game in hand and they're like a point behind, Everton win that game in hand and they go into the top 4. And this is the difference here, the sense that I think Everton's run-in isn't necessarily great, but the expectation on them is a lot lower, though they've got most of their key pieces back. And I think that's one of the things we haven't taken into consideration when you're looking at the toffees. So, for instance, City win the league, and I think that's pretty much a done deal, right? From 2 all the way down to about 6. Let's go. Where's Spurs? 8. All right. So let's say from 2 till 8. It really is a bun fight towards the end of the season as to who will come out on top. And the general prediction in these kinds of situations is whoever has the most firepower. So that's why you can almost count out West Ham, because they've got a goal difference of +9. They're not scoring enough goals, and that's really good.
They don't have a centre forward. Yeah, they basically play with an auxiliary, like with a false 9 there. Yeah,
exactly. Then you look at Everton, who've got a goal difference of +5. They also haven't been scoring goals at a rate of knots. However, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is back. Richarlison has found the back of the net again, and then potentially you could try and call on somebody else to do some help to help there. Maybe James. Who knows? But generally, that will also keep them out. Now, if you're looking from a goal difference perspective, Leicester still have a great goal difference, though they've lost a lot of really quality creative players. Chelsea do. Liverpool's is fair, but Spurs is also there at +14 versus Leicester's +5.
Well, if you're putting 6 past teams early on in the season, obviously it's going to look great.
We put 4 past the team last week, bro.
But also +8, like you beat somebody 9-0 and 9-1, like United have, and the goal difference looks great.
Remembering beating us 6-1 isn't necessarily just +5. It's actually like a 10-goal swing because it's against your competitor in the top 4 race. It's a 10-goal swing.
But when it comes down to it from a goal difference perspective, obviously beating teams 9-something is going to really balance your goal difference. But it also says that you've got the attacking potential. And that's the key thing here. So other teams will say, who are we going to call on to try and score us goals, like West Ham, whereas Spurs, Liverpool, Chelsea, United will all say, oh, we've got about 7 different guys who could maybe go and score goals. So I think that might be one of the indicators. But I would say,
and that's something we've seen in the season. Sorry, I'd like to get
carry on. You
haven't seen someone in this season go like way off the scoring chart. And I don't know if it's the nature of the season with games every single week. We haven't seen someone who's going to bag 30 goals this season. I mean, you look at City, who are far and away the leaders of this Premier League, and they've got like Gundogan leading the like Premier League top scorers list. And I think that's been the nature of the season, is that teams who are doing well are generally sharing goals amongst them. So United have Bruno, who's been the spearhead of the goals, but equally Marcus Rashford chips in, and Cavani has scored 6, and there's a general sense of someone will get a goal. Someone in this team will get a goal, which in fact, under Thomas Tuchel, I've actually thought that Chelsea have lacked so far. Is that they've lacked under him. They've found a defensive solidity under him, but
which has blunted their attack.
Come at the expense of the attack. And that's now what I've seen so far is sort of not the same as United, City, Spurs, who's saying, okay, someone will score. Someone here will score. Someone will make a goal. Chelsea are looking for a moment of magic from somewhere and saying, who's going to do it today? Someone needs to do it. Who's it going to be?
Yeah. And there's no Eden Hazard. But having said that, though, it's almost the Atletico Madrid formula, right? In the sense that you've got any one of the 3 attackers who could potentially score for them, as long as you're making it difficult for teams to score against you, Suarez or Joao Felix could, chip in with the goal. And Chelsea are looking at the same thing. That's why Giroud has become very important. And that's why beautiful. Dean might say Deleuze was better. Yeah, I knew it.
Deleuze was better.
But he's going to try on a Thursday night as opposed to a Tuesday or Wednesday.
Well, they were actually playing on a Wednesday night that day.
That is true. So
there's something that we haven't considered with Dean's argument of Spurs and Liverpool, is that they've now found themselves a little bit behind the 8 ball, and it's now not just relying on themselves to go and win games. They also have to rely on everybody else around them to slip up. So, for example, in the analogy of me beating Dean in a 5K, he keeps telling everybody that he started behind all the fat people, and yes, Spurs are starting well behind all the fat people. There's a big fat West Ham in front of them with a big fat Souček who's scoring goals, and there's Leicester, and there's big fat people.
I wouldn't call it that. I wouldn't call it that.
Outside of the fat shaming, we're not into fat shaming, but we get the point. Let's talk about those. Let's talk about those obstacles in between everybody else who's called the traditional top 6. Cyrus has spoken about Everton. We've given Leicester a little bit of credence, but Wahid, you've spoken about how these injuries Dean spoke about them, but you mentioned here in the chat that Fofana is very important to them, but he's out. James Justin is out, and he was such an important piece. Castagna hasn't looked the same ever since he's come back. They're playing with a right back as a right midfielder in Ricardo Pereira. You've got Barnes and Maddison out as well. On top of that, I think Soyuncu's back.
We'll come back to the Ricardo Pereira thing in the FPL talk, because I think that's an important point to just bring up.
No. Yes, but looking at West Ham, and I know you don't like David Moyes as much as the rest of us. What do you foresee a slide, or are they just going to keep chipping away like they've been doing? Because they haven't been running away like Leicester ran away with that season in 2016, where they were just always at the top and nobody could somehow beat them. but they're in and around the mix, and that makes it more complicated because when you guys have mentioned, like I was talking about the fact that United's so great against the top isn't great against the top six, but everyone else they're great, and then then everyone threw in West Ham as a big fixture. Can these guys cause problems? Are they going to stay there, or are they going to slide down? And also, speaking from an Arsenal perspective, I need them to slide down. I don't know how, but I need help from someone else above me to push people down.
It's very similar to the Everton side that David Moyes managed. They're a group of very functional, good players who are now forming a sort of cohesive unit based on a good foundation, a good foundation, and then they've got a little bit of they've got a left back in Creswell or Sufal, who's the right back,
Sufal,
they're very similar to like the Seamus Coleman or the Leighton Baines that played under David Moyes. They've got
Souček is the Fellaini,
who's very much similar to Fellaini. They've got Declan Rice, who's very good in front of that defense, and they've just formed a good cohesive unit. Are they going to make top four? Maybe, but they are just chipping away. They're doing just enough every week to still have their name in the hat at the end of the season.
And it didn't help that you gave them Jesse Lingard. It just
Jesse just adds that little bit of stardust that they need. Just that little bit of stardust that they need has been added there.
That's a really, really good point, because the problem with West Ham is they are a bits and pieces team. There aren't very many players on that team where you'd say, yeah, I would definitely have that guy on my side, apart from in particular Declan Rice, who has been phenomenal for them, right? But games are won by your forward line, and often Sam Allardyce teams will also tell you, lump it up and see whose head is the biggest or who's got the biggest boot. So that's how Kevin Nolan used to be such an important player in teams like that. West Ham have used Mikel Antonio in that way, and then tried to do that with Sebastian Haller and a whole bunch of other strikers. They don't seem to have enough from a creativity perspective to continually break down teams. So let's say they do equalize against City in their game, then they need to try and get another goal. They run out of their goals fairly quickly in games like that. And I think that's where perhaps Lingard might be important, but I don't see him being the difference maker. So to your point, I think West Ham definitely do enough. But when you look at their run, they have to play teams in the top 6, top 8, and Arsenal. And they should potentially lose those games. They are very functional. They defend fairly well, and that's what Moyes has done, is that he said, look, let's make it hard for people to beat us. But when you look at the results they've had, I think of the teams, they drew with City early in the season, but City were absolutely horrible. They've lost to Arsenal. I think, didn't United also beat them 3-1? Chelsea beat them 3-0. So when you look at them as being a team that could compete, I think that when they played those guys who were in and around them, like you said, Mpo, chances are they're going to get found out again. And that's the biggest issue for West Ham. And then Leicester would have been one of the other contenders, except losing. In fact, Fofana is a massive loss for them. And Soyuncu just hasn't been the same since he came back from injury. But it's when you start having to use makeshift players in positions, and this is also a function of Leicester not necessarily having a massive squad. What they wouldn't give for a Damari Gray, who they went and let go in a situation like this, who would have been fantastic for them from a creative perspective.
Yeah, it speaks to squad management. Dean, from your perspective, when you look at these three teams in and around you, and I'll include Aston Villa because they're an interesting one, but Jack Grealish's injuries may have held them back. Do you foresee them? Obviously, you need them to drop points, but do you think that they can hold on? Do you think a team like a Villa with a game in hand as well, that they can hang around and they will cause? Because the frustrating thing about, and you know this as a Spurs fan, when you try and over the years, including Arsenal, in terms of trying to get to 5 and 6, there's always these other teams hanging around. And for me, throughout the past decade, Everton was always that team that was always in and around 5 and 6 and 7 that you had to always overcome, and it became a big game when it wasn't necessarily supposed to be a big game. Do you think Spurs can find a way through those guys, or are you? Because I know I've asked you about that, but it's just like, in terms of seeing those teams, do you see them as a threat, or do you hope that in the last 13 games they will just wilt away?
So I think the important thing to note here, and I think we touched on it on West Ham, is we also can't ignore the fact that West Ham have either had their recruitment has just either been amazing, or it's just all been amazing and it's all sparked at the same time. Getting guys like Kufal, it could have gone badly, but it went really well. Souček could have gone really badly, went well. Got a United reject in Lingard, suddenly he can play again. So all of those sort of transfers happened, and I don't want to put it to Moyes' magic, but I think all of those kind of spark together, and that's why we're seeing the kind of unit they have. And I think that talks to some of the other teams that we're seeing, where you look at some of those guys ahead of Spurs, and we can throw Villa in there. A lot of the guys, or a lot of those teams have one or two players that they rely on. And at the moment, those players are the ones that are kind of missing. So you look at Villa and you got Grealish missing. He's a massive influence in that team. No one's ever going to deny that or, try and fault that. So him missing immediately puts Villa in a different category to what you would have looked at Villa with Grealish, right? And the same can be said for Leicester, which we've spoken about, Maddison and Barnes missing. Vardy used to be, or Vardy's still in that category, but he needs someone behind him that's going to play that through ball and over ball to get it to him, right? And that's where I think the Everton sort of argument does hold a bit of weight, because their squad is now fully fit. You've got DCL that is fine. You've got Richarlison who's playing well. You've also got, that defense is still looking not rock solid, but it is looking pretty decent at the moment with Deeney and stuff. And you've also got Andre Gomez also, back in that midfield. So all of those kind of guys.
Godfrey has been
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of what I was talking about earlier, I think I do discredit West Ham purely because it's West Ham, and the run of games that they do have coming in is really tough. I think from a Leicester perspective, I discredit Leicester purely because of the players that you would rely on aren't there anymore. And also, if you have a look at their fan base, they're not looking at it of, oh, maybe we stand a chance. They're looking at it of, oh, wow, we're going to crash and burn again. And that's a good indicator of what's going to happen at a club. Of your fans know your club way better than anyone else, obviously. And that's why I think the conversation is going to come down to Liverpool, Everton, Spurs for that top four. And literally, it's going to be a case of who can hold on and who can kind of stick around the longest. I think Liverpool, we saw them slide. Fine, they beat. They won 2-0. I think it was last night or the night before. Yeah, it's Sheffield. It's not like you're going to count that as a massive turnaround. Same with Spurs. You're not going to count a 4-0 against Burnley, but that could be a catalyst to go forward. It's just
the thing with Liverpool, Dean. The thing with Liverpool is they're starting to get their players back. Fabinho is going to play some more.
Exactly.
Yeah, so as we hitting the crunch time, they're getting their players back, and the thing from Klopp's perspective, and all Liverpool fans are watching this, and they're probably just hoping that these players are able to hit the ground running, and that's going to be the big question for Liverpool: is as their players come back, is it going to take them time? Is it going to take them time to reintroduce themselves into the squad, or are they going to be able to get in, get fit, get playing, get results? And I think that's
the thing. Yeah. Everton's got a full squad now. Liverpool's going to have a fairly fullish squad. Spurs got a full squad except for Lo Celso. It's literally you can't write an excuse.
But here's one thing that I think we haven't spoken about is that all the so-called big six, top six, have European commitments midweek and then you play on Saturday. Whereas we're getting to a point in the league where everyone's going to have, by the time this double game week is over, everyone's going to be, there won't be a lot of games in hand left. And so the whole midweek, especially if you're playing in Europa, the whole Thursday night, Sunday. And once you get into the Champions League quarterfinals, if whoever's still there, i.e. Liverpool and also Chelsea, as well as, but the two up top as well, maybe even Manchester United
City,
on Thursday nights. Yeah, it's going to give that Leicester, that West Ham, and that Everton 7 days rest, effectively, to prepare for the next weekend's game. And that's something that might be a little bit tougher for a Liverpool side with these guys coming back from injuries, because there's no respite. This is the first time I think Arsenal haven't played on midweek in, like, I don't know, God knows how long. And sometimes you need those breaks, but that's what Champions League does to you. You have big squads, but from a Liverpool perspective, I don't know how he's going to manage that.
The one thing we got to consider with Spurs, though, and Mourinho has done it before, is in 5 games' time, if Spurs are still sitting in 7th and 8th, he's going to have a decision to make. He's going to say, do I go for it on a Thursday and a Sunday? Or am I saying, okay, guys, everything on a Thursday night, which he did in his first season at United, everything on the Thursday night. And guys, you know what? We'll put in some form of a performance on a Sunday. Then again, we got everything on the Thursday night. And
I don't even think it's 5 games, right? I don't think it's 5 games. I think it's maybe 2 or 3 max. I think
so
we go
after
into
the
the mid of
Arsenal
March.
game, if you
After
lose
the Arsenal game,
he's going to.
I think
he's gonna
after
do
Arsenal,
Thursday
he
night.
says, "Okay, cool, guys, we're gonna put out Harry Winks and Dane Scarlett on a
Harry
Sunday,
Winks.
and we're gonna have a flip and go on a Thursday." That's what's gonna happen. And Wahid's got a good point. That's exactly what Mourinho's gonna do. It's exactly what, because that's the
Harry
best
Winks
way.
is a crab. I've never seen a more crab-like footballer. Everything goes sideways and backwards.
He is the future of England football. Don't talk about him.
Which is unfortunate.
Okay,
But that
speaking
says it
about
all.
the future of England football, number 1 plays number 2 this weekend. It's the Manchester Derby. I don't know what else they call it. We have some fun names for derbies elsewhere in the world, but it's called the Manchester Derby. I know why he's
El Manquico.
Yeah, that one. City have not lost in 21 games. They are just a freight train. Wahid, how are you feeling? Can you beat them?
No.
But Ole's not going to try and beat them. And this is the Chelsea game was evidence of that. And that's also why the penalty
I disagree. I disagree with you. So
of course you would.
United actually, if you look back, okay, let's go one season back. Ole's record against the Big Six was actually really good. It was phenomenally good. But his record against teams sitting maybe 20th to 15th was sketchy. It wasn't good. He was struggling to break those teams down. They'd play a back 6, they'd play 2 blocks of 4, and he'd struggle to break them down. This season, we're seeing the converse. We're seeing him able to smash out to Southampton, no problem. Leeds come and go. Like that's not a problem for Ole at the moment. What we've seen, though, is a shift in the mentality in the big game. Last season, a lot of United fans were saying, we're getting results against City and Chelsea and Liverpool, but the problem was the mentality. He was going with the back 3, he was going with the underdog mentality, and he was saying, come at us, and we'll catch you on the break with Rashford and Martial. We'll catch you. We're going to catch you. Come at us. This season, he's played it a little bit differently. He's actually gone and tried to attack the opposition. We've seen it against Chelsea on this weekend. United
Did United really try and attack Chelsea in that game? Because I honestly don't think that was what we saw. I think we saw
the mentality is slightly different.
Counterattack.
The mentality is slightly different. We aren't playing with the back 3. We are going with the back 4. We are actually trying to take the game to the opposition. We're not gifting the ball to the opposition and saying, come at us and we'll catch you. The mentality has been slightly different. And I think this needs to, at some point, he needs to find a balance between the two. He attacked in the one of the games we drew 0-0. I can't remember which one.
But it was against Arsenal.
It's just not worked. It just hasn't worked out for him this season. And he needs to maybe going into next season find that balance between going, we the underdogs, we'll catch them on the break, or guys, you know what, we attacking fully. Somewhere he needs to find the balance between it. And I think that's been the stickler so far.
Yeah.
But here's a question. This side, let's get to the side. So this weekend, you know that you're facing a team that can score at will. They control the game. You're going to be on the back foot. Isn't this the time for you to try and say, let's try not lose this game and close it out, and possibly play the back 3? Or is your best form of defense attack, like you did against Arsenal and got those
The 2 big games we've actually gone out and won well this season was PSG and the first game against Leipzig. And what did we do in both those games? Back 3 counter-attack. And I would do the same this weekend.
But that's exactly what Ole is going to do. And that's exactly my point, in the sense that I don't think Solskjaer goes out to win the derby in terms of all-out attack. I think he goes to go into the game and say, let's make ourselves tough to beat, and we can give them an absolute game on the break. That's why you saw it in the Chelsea game. You saw it in the Liverpool game. He doesn't. It's not as if he's going there saying, I'm going to play negative football. I think what he says is, I want to get a result from this game, whether that is a draw at the very least or a victory at the best. And this is where you're almost caught, because you have a weird mentality in a derby where you've got to show them this is the noisy neighbors. We could potentially, try and make up some ground on them. I mean, it's a 15-point gap at the moment. So, let's make it so that they know that we bloodied their nose. And I think United will have that in one part of their thinking. But I think that Solskjaer has proven to be the kind of manager that is relatively pragmatic, regardless of the big victories he's had against certain teams. Because that United team is not free-flowing. It isn't one that attacks at will. They pick you apart, they find the best moments to strike, and then they go for it. And then they use pace, they use their guile in instances, and then they make sure that Bruno scores the penalties when he needs to. But But this is, it could come down to one of those things where you find yourself in a tight game against City, as you've had before, in particularly earlier in this season, and then it could be a moment like a penalty. It could be a VAR decision that goes your way. So I think Ole plays the percentages. I actually think Solskjaer plays Moneyball when he looks at the league, and he says, you know what, the reality is we can beat all the weak teams, try and make sure we don't lose against the bigger teams, and then let's see where that leaves us. If we can get one or two,
where they are.
Exactly. I don't think it's a bad system. I think Ole knows who he is as a manager. He knows what this United team is, and he's playing to the strengths that he has. Whereas City could, and this is Pep's failing, City could be
trying
anyone.
to mask the deficiencies in the team, because he goes into all big games with McTominay and Fred in front of that leaky back four. So he knows the deficiencies at centre back, and he knows how to mask those with McTominay and Fred.
Exactly. I mean, in essence, we know that United versus City is going to be a midfield battle where you're going to have City trying to break down a 5-6 man block that will sit relatively low, and then you'll have Rashford standing on the halfway line on one side and Dan James on the other side, and then they're just waiting for those long balls to come through, or the through balls, if we want to call it something nicer. But
Javelin football, that's what I call it. It's beautiful.
Nothing wrong. If it works, it works.
Hey, look, there's nothing wrong with javelin football. Look at South African soccer. Dean, what do you think this game? What do you think is going to happen in this game? Can United try and bloody City's nose, or are we just going to see the return of KDB?
I mean, if I was United, 100%, you've got nothing to lose. You're 15 points behind. Honestly, just go out there and just try and beat City. Like, everyone's so scared of them. Everyone hasn't really just gone on the attack. Obviously, we've said United don't really have the players that can, they've got the players that can play that counter-attacking football. But I honestly think, what is there to lose? The only part of this game that exactly what we've said is going to be a battle of the midfield. And now with KDB being back, from a United perspective, you're sitting there before the game and you're saying, okay, maybe if we go out and we run a bit, we could actually, maybe get something from this game. Having said that, the converse is also true, where if you're a little bit open in that midfield, KDB and those kind of guys are going to run rampant. And what I think United don't want to do is lose 5-0, which could happen. City could do that if they feel like it. So
it won't.
I think it's a bit of, it won't, but I think it's kind of, that's probably what's keeping Ole up at night, or not keeping Ole up at night. It's that. And the last thing I want to say, the worst part about this game for me is that the last Manchester derby in December, Spurs were top of the log, and I said, oh, guys, 7th plays 8th, no one cares. Now we're sitting here early March, Spurs are in 9th, and it's 1 plays 2.
That's when Mr. Battersby was on his stock count at the chicken factory, wasn't it?
So we now found out that Dean as well has some really awkward predictions, but that's what it is. We put our necks on the line there. So I'm gonna call it at that for the normal Premier League portion, with the banter still gonna continue on the FPL portion, because someone's got an entire City situation for their FPL team. So let's get on to that right now. Yeah, so we've taken a break. Welcome to our FPL edition of the Cheap Seats. This is where we discuss everything that's happening in Fantasy Premier League. Cyrus has an announcement to make. Cyrus, please make it short and sharp. What would you like to tell peeps of FPL land?
I officially retired from FPL this season. It happened when I absolutely messed up the double game week by waiting too long and then missing the deadline. But for the purposes of this show, I have made picks. Whether they will pan out or not, that's up to the universe. It's not up to me.
Okay, with that retirement, just remember that you can still follow us on these various platforms. Most importantly, on YouTube, please like and subscribe to our channel for more of the FPL-related content. We do it every week. This week is Game Week 27. It's a double game week, but it's I hate it when people call it a double game week because it's just one game, and that is Manchester City are playing Southampton as the extra game. So if you've got Southampton players or City players, maybe consider a doubling up. I'm not sure if you want to double up on Southampton players if they're playing against City, but 2 points is still something for like a James Ward-Prowse. It might work unless if he concedes quite a lot. I asked the guys, Cyrus, Wahid, and Dean, to give us their transfers in for the week, transfers out, their differential picks, captaincy picks for this week. And so the most important one, let's start with Cyrus because he's retired. So this is what Cyrus decided to tell us, to provide to us. And so Cyrus, please explain. Please explain.
So my thinking on this is I like Riyad Mahrez. He's got a fantastic looking beard. And I say, in fact, from a differential perspective, he's actually pretty good. There's a lot of people who just, because of Pep rotation, they're like, no, there's no ways this guy will play. But the thing about Mahrez is that if he doesn't start, he'll come in as a sub. So he generally gets some game time. And I think that from that perspective, when you look at how much he actually contributes to what's happening with City, on a good day, he's one of the guys. So as a retired guy, sipping my tea while I'm watching my plants grow in the garden, I can say, Riyad Mahrez, I'm going to bring you in. In fact, Jack Grealish, you may leave with your injured, sorry butt. And then I'm going to say, Riyad Mahrez, maybe I might even captain you because you're playing twice this week. So go for it, man. Go for it.
So
was
Jack Grealish the reason why your double game week was messed up?
Last week? No.
Yeah.
My double game week was I had Maddison and Grealish in my team. I then also had wanted to transfer in Dominic Calvert-Lewin and take out Danny Ings. I didn't get to do that. I didn't change my captain from the week before, which was Patrick Bamford. I was going to make it somebody else, Heung-min Son, who then went to go and score some nice points. So you can imagine it was the straw that broke the camel's back. FPL can do that to you, you know. You can have your life, your things are really looking good, the sun is shining, and then all of a sudden you realize you've absolutely missed the deadline that you knew was coming, and then you're like, oh, well, what am I going to do with my life? I guess it's all over.
Okay, so now let's move on to Wahid's situation. It is his picks for the week. Transferring Richarlison, differential Riyad Mahrez, transferring out Jack Grealish, and captaining Mo Salah. So Cyrus, you're not the only one who had Jack Grealish in the double game week. Wahid, just give us a sense of what your thinking is around these guys.
So my differential is Mahrez, and I'll tell you why. Is that, you know, Mahrez doesn't play every game, but when he plays, he does do well, and he does pick up fantasy points. And in a double game week, it's likely with a Pep rotation to see Mahrez at least start one of those games. So I would consider him a differential. He isn't owned by many because of Pep rotation, but I think he's the type of player who could play against Southampton and do really well. Jack Grealish. Guys, am I still on the score?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just went dead silent there.
No,
We're listening.
No one
We're
gave what
soaking
they
up.
say, but yeah.
We're soaking up.
Jack Grealish, I went for the squad mentality game, and I thought one of my bench players will come in for him. So for my double game week, Michael Antonio comes in, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but now I'm thinking about getting rid of Jack Grealish. So you have options in that role, and one of them is Mahrez because it's at a similar price point, 7.6 and 8.1. Or the other option is to downscale, get a Jesse Lingard, and then upgrade one of your forwards, who I've got three pretty much like budget forwards in Bamford, Watkins, and Antonio, to a Richarlison, who's coming back into form, who's scoring on the weekly, and that was my transfer in for the week, to say this is a player we could consider who's starting to do well. Calvert-Lewin is starting to look like a non-scoring forward at the moment in the last couple of games, and Richarlison seems to be the one scoring around him. And then Mo Salah, I just think that with an easier game week this week, he might be one to captain. Just thinking that he could be one to go ahead and score a few goals this week. We could potentially, they turned it around against Sheffield, and if they did, Mo Salah is usually the outlet when looking at captaincies. Though I would be tempted, as Cyrus suggested, to captain Riyad Mahrez, thinking that within the Pep rotation he might start one of the games. Another one that came into my thinking, Ricardo Pereira. I've had him for a few weeks already, so he wasn't bring in or bring out, but he is playing as a right winger now, but listed as a defender in fantasy. So he is one to look at going forward.
Yeah. I think we spoke about Ricardo Pereira last week. I think Tipple brought him on, speaking about him. So very interesting point there on the Mo Salah, because I think I have Mo Salah there. So I transferred in Lionel Jesse for once. I finally found a way to figure it out. Harvey Barnes, I brought him in last week thinking he'd have a very long run in my side, but somehow Arsenal decided to break him. My differential this week is Ruben Neves. I've been looking at this Wolves side outside of the City game this week, and I kind of felt that he's the guy that possibly is where the points are in this Wolves team. And Wolves are struggling, but they're looking to move up the log. And I thought maybe this week that Ruben Neves could be a differential, not necessarily this week, but for the coming games, because I think they don't have that tough run in. And then obviously Mo Salah as a captain because of Fulham. I love Scott Parker. I think he's worked on that defense. I think Anderson, if you're looking for a cheap defender, Anderson's the guy. He's taking free kicks. He's a leader of that defense, and seemingly it's working. And he's also got prowess in the box. But I do think they'll come unstuck against Liverpool with Mo Salah. Dean, you had an interesting one. You made Mo Salah differential going against every rule of differential in the game. So take us through your love for KDB, seemingly.
So this decision was kind of made for me yesterday, watching that City Wolves game, and I think now with KDB back, we all thought that maybe him and Gundogan could play together. Obviously, Gundogan sat on the bench, which I don't think is always going to be the case. But since KDB has come back, we've kind of seen a more quiet Gundogan. And honestly, you can't. The one rule in fantasy is you can't afford to have someone in your team who may not start. You have to at least get minimum of 2 points. So the reason why I'm doing that is purely because I think KDB. From a Pep point of view, I think KDB has a better chance of being selected to start. Having said that, then Gundogan had to make way. Also had to take a bit of a points hit to get KDB in, so also had to ship out Harvey Barnes, similar to you and Paul. And that's also purely based on the injury. The differential is, I understand it goes against the norms of what a differential is, but the reason why I see him as a differential is exactly that. We saw them beat Sheffield, or we saw Liverpool beat Sheffield last week, and they've got Fulham, right? So now Salah hasn't performed over the last 2 or 3 weeks in terms of FPL, and there's been a lot of chat amongst people on FPL saying, "Well, is it time to ship Salah?" Now, this is why I think it could be a differential, because I think a lot of people have to bring KDB back into their teams, especially given the double game week this week, and I think that's why. Salah, and exactly as Wahid had said, if Liverpool want to score, more likely than not, it's going to be Salah, and it is Fulham, and they will probably win that game, more likely than not. And if they're going to score goals, it's going to be a Salah. But not a lot of people have got them in his team right now because of the kind of conundrum of what are Liverpool doing? No one really knows. So I think that's more the reason of why I'm putting Salah as a differential. Just to have a little punt at myself, I did get the differential pick last week pretty well. Gareth Bale differential 19 points, so I wouldn't say I'm that bad. Differential picks. And then
captain. Triple captains, Ruben Diaz, just saying.
Okay, good, well done. But yeah, from a captain perspective, I think I've said the same thing over the last 2 weeks. You have to captain someone that's got a double game week, and you're looking at that Southampton fixture that City have, and I think Southampton have scored. I think they've managed to take 1 point out of a possible of 30, and that was against Chelsea.
Yeah.
And the goal scorer there was Minamino. So
yeah.
Even if you look at those Southampton assets, looking at the guys that you might normally want to get from an Ings perspective or something like that, they're not looking good. And I think City are there to kind of run rampant again. And we've seen United take them apart 9-0. And I wouldn't be surprised if City kind of puts something similar past them. So a De Bruyne in that situation is key. If you're looking at any other City assets that you have, I'd probably put the armband on them. Like Mahrez has been spoken about, perhaps even a Jesus if you've got him. We saw him come to the good last night. So it's definitely a City captain pick for me. But in terms of kind of looking
at
that
Aguero gets 90 against Southampton.
Yeah, well, that other choice, we actually don't know that. But yeah, Aguero sitting on Cyrus's bench is still from week 1. So maybe he comes in.
Season.
No, but that Aguero pick is an interesting one because obviously he's come in, he's played a few minutes with Pep rotation and the fact that they have Champions League midweek. After that, well, they don't, because Southampton's midweek. So they're playing United on the weekend. I don't think Aguero will play. Unless if Pep wants to surprise the world. But I do think against the Southampton, it's a really nice game to get Aguero in with a very strong midfield. And I think what Pep's trying to let everyone know, I think, is Gundogan's probably going to lead the one side, and KDB's probably going to be in the midfield for the other side. And that's how it's going to work. You're going to try and split the two up until the workloads kind of match. I think KDB's workload matches.
And we tried to guess what Pep's going to do in his team. And let's be honest, no one knows.
Pep doesn't even know.
Yeah.
He rolls the dice.
No, but that's the thing. Like, that was my conundrum this week was to, obviously, I've got Gundogan in. Do I push him out for KDB, or do I just hold on and hope Gundogan gets to play the Southampton game and try and get those bucket loads of points, or get KDB in and say, you know what, I'm going forward. And the other thing, obviously, was the blank game week that I had in my head. So I was trying to figure out because obviously for me to get KDB in, I needed a very cheap midfielder. And so I'm working around either Ruben Neves or Bukayo Saka, but I choose not to put Arsenal players in.
He disappointed me when I put him in because he was then moved to defense. And I'm like, Arteta is a mini Pep in so many ways. He doesn't like FPL, and as soon as somebody is performing going forward, he's like, no, you're really a defender.
Yeah. So from a captaincy perspective, do you suggest a City pick, all of you, or will you are people? I think Wahid and myself we're holding out on a Salah to blow the barn door against Fulham.
I think Salah is a differential captain, if I can call it that, and I think City asset is a safe captain. If you want to put it that way.
Is it a safe captain? Because when you're picking City players now,
if you've got KDB is a solid captain.
Apart from Sterling, but KDB is just back from injury.
Yeah.
So apart from Sterling, name a player who's going to start. Like, you bet your house on a player who's going to start. Third.
KDB.
Both games.
No, KDB will not start both games.
You will. Okay. We'll come back next week and he would have started both games.
And when he plays, and he'll play against United and he'll do nothing. And like, this was the earlier portion of this show where we were talking about the United City game. I think we have to take that into consideration here, because Ole's blueprint for how he's going to tackle United basically proved to be what I think will happen in the game against City this coming weekend, which is negate what happens in the midfield. De Bruyne did nothing in that game. He was absolutely nowhere, not because United was that good, but because he was given so little space to work with. And when that happens, it's pointless even having him in your FPL, because I think that's what's going to happen in this game. That I think United are going to basically stifle whatever creativity comes from De Bruyne. And then with Sterling, I mean, gosh, that guy needs to load
Cyrus is
load
Sterling.
AK on his leg. Sheesh, dude, he's unbelievably frustrating because you just don't know what you're going to get from him. And to tell the truth, he's the reason why City didn't make it to a Champions League final, was that he just couldn't score from open situations. But I'll leave my frustration with him.
So this week, Arsenal play Burnley, Spurs play Crystal Palace as probably the point getters, as well as Liverpool and Fulham. Are there any guys that you're considering from those games, probably Arsenal, Spurs, and Liverpool, to add on outside of Mo Salah? Who?
Bale.
Son or Kane?
Yeah, for me.
But here was the fun one. Gareth Bale's at a 9.5. I know you took the punt on him, Dean. Is Gareth Bale going to continue in this role as a wide right, or Lucas Moura is going to take back?
I think Bale's going to... So Mourinho had his press conference today and he said Bale will either start or come off the bench in that game. So he's definitely going to play a role in that game. Okay. I 100% back him to start based on the last 5 games. And I also think what you have to take into account is Son has been performing since day one, all right? Bale's been on the bench. He's had a little bit of time to relax. He's only really come to the forefront in the last 4 games.
Everybody in? Wahid, you good?
I'm here.
Oh. Shit. Oh, shit. Wahid? Good. Wahid, can you hear me? Oh, we're back. Are we good? We've lost Dean.
In the middle of him making his point.
Yes, we lost Dean, and I think we lost everyone. But okay, here he is. He's back in again. Yeah, so we had technical difficulties. We do apologize for that. Dean, you can finish your point. Clearly, the universe doesn't want to hear about Bale.
No.
Bale is
what I was trying to say. Bale at the same price of what Son is, I think he's a better punt. Given where we are in FPL, I think more people have Son, less people have Bale. 19 points last week. I don't think he's going to pull the same thing against the Palace. But I think in terms of where you're probably going to get more FPL points as well as gain a little bit more on people that don't have the same players, I think Bale's a better option. And again, yeah, it's Crystal Palace and they leaky at the moment. So I don't have Bale in my team, but definitely looking at bringing him in.
Trust your differential pick there, Dean. Trust your differential pick. Any final words, gents? Wahid, any sneaky tips for people that you think they should take through? Or Cyrus, since you're retired, you can just drop the wisdom.
Well, I'll go first. I do think that Spurs game is going to be an interesting one, and I do think that what Mourinho does is that he cherishes form. And Bale seems to be in a very rich vein of form. The only player who can hit form and still get dropped is Dele Alli in Mourinho's eyes. I just don't get it, but I also understand that's how Mourinho is. If you're one of the guys that he loves, you will play every single game. But I do think that Bale might pop up with a couple of goals. And the problem with Palace right now is that they look horrible. You don't know what you're going to get with them. Spurs should beat them relatively easily. And I think that's why I said Kane or Son, because I think either one of them, if not both of them, will score in that game. Okay,
Wahid, any tricks, any games that you're watching where some guy might just score a bucket of goals? I'm looking at Villa and Wolves. I think Watkins might just come good against that Wolves side.
Marcus Rashford is scoring a hat-trick this weekend.
Okay, I'll put him in.
After everything we've spoken about, you hit with that final goal.
Now, balls to the wall. We're going to win it.
And that's the way, Thank you. This is time for us to wrap it up. Thank you very much, guys, for joining. Thank you very much for everyone watching. Please remember, do subscribe to the channel and like the video. But yeah, so for myself, Cyrus, Dean, and Wahid, enjoy the football this weekend. And in the midweek with Man City playing Southampton. And we'll be back again next week. But for myself, Cyrus, Dean, and Wahid. le sale Kakagiso.